Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another before and after. So for this one, I'm going to be looking at Max Steel, but I gotta make it quick because I only have 5 minutes to go to this. Yay! So, yeah, first things first, I honestly just finished watching the show last night. I could say I've been trying to get prepared for this, and honestly, I think it's kind of the perfect thing to remake now. Like, for one, there's a bit of that nostalgia factor to it, which has been very prominent. It's going to be a remake. That's been going on everywhere, so, yeah. It's been making money, so that's something. And also, it's a superhero thing, which is huge right now. Honestly, I think this is kind of the perfect thing to remake. So, yeah, honestly, I kind of hope from this movie either it'll be just like the show, which is bad, but has good aspects to it, or it'll be better. So that's personally where I fall on the spectrum with this one. Either it'll be just like it, and it'll be bad, but has good aspects to it. Maybe it'll be worse, I don't know how they'll pull that off. Or it'll be even better than that. So really, I am hoping for the best with this one. So yeah, it has got some pretty negative reviews, but I have heard some good ones. So yeah, I'm mostly pretty excited for it. The overall premise from what I can gather is this. Maxwell McGrath has now moved to a new city and then eventually gains turbo abilities, which he needs Steel to help control as he fights the forces of evil, which are pretty much Dredd and other villains like him, probably the Elementors, because we see them in the trailer a little bit. So, yeah. I just finished watching the show. So, yeah, I honestly just finished watching it, and honestly, I hope that they can upgrade a lot of the things in it. Like, there are a lot of things to be improved to make the characters more interesting. Like, outside of Steel, none of the characters are really that interesting. So I'm hoping that they can fix that with this movie. Maybe try and actually make some of the storylines better. Like, there were a lot of storylines that honestly were pretty boring, like the Ultralink invasion. You would think that that would be really exciting. It's okay. Like, it could have been much better, though. And one thing else that I'm really hoping for with this is that the villains actually have origins. Yes, this was a huge problem I had with the show, is that all of the villains on the show, they either never have their origin explained, like Makino, who hopefully will not be in this, because then they'll be jumping past all the good stuff on the show. Well, I guess they could still bring in the McGraw part of the storyline, which was cool, so they could bring in that. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really think that there's that much to do from Season 2. So if they jump right into the Ultralink invasion, which is where that villain comes in, yeah, I honestly would not like if they did that. Hopefully they won't. I really do pray that they don't, because that would be skipping over my favorite part, which was Steel's amnesia, which was really interesting. But yeah, hopefully they won't skip past that. But yeah, that's one of the main things I was worried about, because in the trailer they're saying, like, okay, you gotta prepare for this Ultralink invasion. I'm just like, wait, no, please don't. Please tell me that you're training for this Ultralink invasion throughout the whole movie. Like, that's what I'm really hoping that they do. Like, from one of the reviews I've heard, that's what they do, so maybe that's what's gonna happen. I don't know. So yeah, back onto the villains, they have no backstory. Like, what's Dredd, the main villain of the series, backstory? He was a bad guy he was a good guy at Intech for a little bit, who creates a device, and he's evil now. That is it. Like, I know it's made for kids, but come on! Embellish a little bit more. I want to know what made him evil. What made him decide to build this machine? Why did he build this machine? Why does he need turbo power to sustain him for so long? How is this much power sustained him for 16 years. Never once explained, it's just he's a bad guy, go with it. Yeah, that's really amazing there. So I'm hoping that they'll embellish a little bit on the villains, at least, like, for the few that I've seen that they have. Like, they seem to have Dredd in it, so I hope that they embellish on him a lot, because after the pilot episode, he was really cool, but I just really wanted to know, how did he end up this way, and they never explain it, so I'm hoping that they'll establish that some more. But yeah, there are honestly just so many things I think that could be improved from the show for this movie, and from the trailer, it looks like they're doing that. Like, there are so many things on the show that have been put into this trailer, too, for, like, the fans of the show, and also for newcomers to be able to understand. I honestly thought that this was a fan trailer when I first watched it, because it seemed so much like the show. Like, it's bad, but it's also has its good moments in it. So, honestly, I thought it was a fan trailer. Like, it even looked better than the show, so I'm like, oh, this is a fan thing. I'll just ignore this. And then, a few months later, I saw the ad for it on TV. Then I knew, okay, I have got to see this movie. So, yeah, I'm honestly really excited to see this one. I wish I could talk a little bit more about this, but I've already run up past 5 minutes. So yeah, we're probably going to be leaving soon, but yeah, honestly, I'm really excited. I think that there's a lot of things that they can improve on from the show, and also, I just think that it could just be better than the show itself. Like, if they focus more on character and story, which I've heard they focus a lot on story, so that's getting me very interested, because, like, it could actually be better than the show was, which the show's, meh, it's alright. It's pretty bad, but there are some good aspects in there, so I'm hoping that they focus more on those good aspects and make the bad aspects better, at least. So, yeah, honestly, I'm pretty excited to see how this one's going to turn out, because, well, it's just interesting to me. Just like the mere idea of a Max Steel movie, it sounded so absurd to me when I first heard it, but then when I thought about it for a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, it has that nostalgia, it's a superhero thing, and it's a remake. Why didn't I patent this first? So, yeah, honestly, I'm really excited for this. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the after part. Okay, so I have now gone back from the movie, and honestly, I really enjoyed it. But the very first thing I want to talk about is the negative reviews towards it. Now, I'm not going to say they're wrong. There are quite a few bad things in this movie, but one thing I do want to point out is that this movie feels like it was very much made for people who have seen the show. Most of the people who did bad reviews on this, they have not seen it. Like, I have not seen all the reviews of it because, well, I'm sure there are quite a few, but yeah, most of them that I've seen, they are pretty much by people who have not seen the show, and to me that's a very important part in watching this movie, because there are tons of little references to the show in this film. Like, Brad Jones mentioned, the one scene where Steel is hitting on a lamp. Yeah, that happened. But that is actually a reference to the show and one of its running gags. To me, that was kind of an important thing that you had to see the show to have recognized. And there are quite a few moments like that, like when Steel talks about the teacher and how tests don't really matter. That is actually a very obscure reference for the show, which came in like season 1, and it was like a very random reference to me too. Like, out of nowhere, they're referencing this very, very unimportant joke in the show. I don't know if that's a great thing, like they picked up on that and decided to include it in the movie, so like people who have seen the show would be like, oh hey, I remember that, or like, hey, I remember that slightly, or I don't remember that at all, but or if it's just something that they threw in because they saw it on the show once and just decided to include it. I don't know, really, but, yeah, mainly this movie was made for people who have seen the show, and that's a very important factor in this. Like, there are some people who have given it a positive review without seeing the show, like J-Tunes, he gave it a positive review, and he hadn't seen the full show, but yeah, most of them have not. So, to me, that's a very important factor in watching this. But, let's actually talk about the movie. I actually got pretty right on what I said for my synopsis, on what I thought this movie was gonna be like. Like, this movie borrows a lot of things from the show. Like, there are tiny little Easter eggs everywhere, so, yeah, I'm not really gonna get into the story right now because I kind of already did. Like, the major change is that there is no N-Tech. Well, there is N-Tech, kinda. Well, the main N-Tech thing that we see is a completely destroyed base, which honestly was awesome to me because it reminded me a lot of one of the episodes in Season 2 when N-Tech's base was destroyed. So that was really awesome to me. Like, it was a nice little reference. There are tons of those in this movie. Honestly, I could name them all, but there are just so many little references to the show, and that I honestly really liked. But, yeah, pretty much the whole entire N-Tech thing, the whole base has now been destroyed, and yeah, I guess there goes one of the major aspects of the show. Except for N-Tech still kind of around, it's just a different organization now, and it's more like the organization that not owned on the show, so yeah, it's not necessarily N-Tech anymore. It's a different company on the show, pretty much, just going by N-Tech's name. That was kind of a random thing to do to me, but yeah, I honestly didn't really mind it that much. Like, it was kind of a random thing, and hey, at least we got a Berto cameo. Yeah, when Steel's breaking out, there is a guy who looks very much like Berto. And there's also a guy who kind of looks like Jefferson, except he's much older, and he's a scientist. If you've seen the show, you know that Jefferson was a pilot who had some very odd obsession with food that was never explained in the slightest. And also, Kate is not in this movie at all. I was kind of disappointed about that because, honestly, those were Jefferson and Kate were kind of the two characters that I was really hoping would get some more development because on the show, they pretty much had cameos, like, enough for you to remember their names, but nothing else really about them. Like, the only thing I remember about them is Kate flew planes well, and Jefferson ate food a lot for some reason. I really don't get that joke. I never got that joke. But, yeah, that was pretty much their big part in that show, so I was really hoping that they would get some more time to be able to develop in this movie, but fortunately, that did not happen. I was kind of disappointed about that, but at least we did get to see Berto in this, like, even though it's just a cameo, which he did a lot more on the show, but yeah, it was still kind of cool to see him even there. So, now, one thing that I found was interesting about this movie is that it mostly feels like a horror movie. Like, most of the scenes, like, okay, so when Steel first comes out and wakes up after 16 years, they direct this like it's a horror movie, and it's actually really cool. That was not all how it was done on the show, but I'm glad that they did the way they did, because honestly, it looked really freaking awesome. So, yeah, I really love that bit, seeing him just break out and everything. That was cool. They also have another scene like that, which is the tornado scene, which was by far my favorite scene in this movie. It was just really a great way of showing the air elementor, which just roars in this movie. That's really it. He just roars a lot. Yeah, on the show he was actually the smartest of all the elementors, and yeah, there were other elementors on the show. There were 4 of them, they are referenced in this movie at one point, but yeah, if you don't really catch it right away, then you'll probably miss it because it's kind of set in the background, but, yeah, they are referenced at one point, but Air Elementor is really the only one who comes in, and he was the smartest one out of all the four of them, and he was actually very strategic, and actually he almost killed Max Steel on quite a few occasions. So what does he do in this movie? Hunts him down like a bloodhound for one scene, chases him around as a tornado, and gets beaten by Max and Steel joining together. Yeah, them joining together is what defeated it. What? Okay, but yeah, that was one of the silliest moments in this movie. Although not as silly as when Max types in "what am I" in the computer. Like, I really don't get that scene. What am I? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, what's the computer gonna pull up? A human being, idiots? Like, I really want to see that scene expanded on just a little bit with the computer just saying, "You're a human being?" I'm sorry, I don't understand this question. But, yeah, pretty much there are quite a few stupid moments in this movie. But I will actually get to more of the positives right now. So they actually expanded on Max's character a lot and gave him a lot more development than he ever had in the show. Well, okay, not more than he ever had. There was one moment that, honestly, I think that if they did more like the show, then it could have been better. When, spoiler, although not many people are seeing this movie, so I guess it's not really a spoiler, it's when Max is revealed to be half alien. Now, this happens halfway through season 2, and it is very unexpected, and it's unexpected in this movie as well, but here's the major difference. This actually plays a part in a lot of ways on the show. It becomes a very important part with Max trying to realize how to even fit in now that he knows that he's half alien. He feels like an outcast even amongst his friends. He ends up almost hating his mother for not telling her about it, even leading up to her maybe being killed at one point, and the last words that he said to her was that he hated her. So yeah, and also him not trusting N-Tech as much. So yeah, this led to a lot of things on the show. So what does it lead to here? Max saying, "I'm half alien, cool." Yeah, that was probably the worst part of this movie to me. He's just like, "Huh, I'm half alien, okay." Like, he treated that the same way Max on the show treated getting turbo energy, which, that was a thing that I really like how it was done in this movie, because he doesn't take it well. Like, the biggest thing that Max protested on about this on the show was that he would have to work with Steel, which, yeah, that's in this movie too. But, yeah, in this, it's actually a little bit more deserved. But, yeah. So, how does Max treat it on the show? "I have turbo powers, oh my god!" Okay, I'm over it. "Oh my god, I had to be bonded with this thing for the rest of my life?" Okay. Yeah, that's honestly how he treats it on the show. Like, it's resolved in like a minute. That was it. I mean, like, yeah, it's the pilot episode, but still, come on. Here it was done much better. I honestly really like how it was done here. He takes it harder, which is something that I liked more with it. And the actor, I think that he was alright, mainly when he actually feels like Max, and when he's actually developed a bit more. But when he's, like, in high school and everything, the dialogue written there is pretty bad. Like, it's usually just like, "Oh, wow, you're Max McGrath, yeah? Your dad, he's a big deal, go look into that." Like, that was pretty much it with that. Although they did bring that horrible teacher from the show in a cameo, so that was something. But, yeah, that was honestly very odd cameo to even put in. But apparently Jim McGrath in this movie was a big deal in this town. How was he treated on the show exactly? He was not heard about, actually. No one remembered him. Only the people at NTech knew about him because they're a secret organization. Secret? Why would people find out about a secret base? Why would people find out what happened there? I mean, yeah, it makes more sense, I guess, since this NTech base is much closer to the city. But, and so yeah, I guess that a giant tornado bearing down on that area and also a giant explosion happening there would kind of draw some attention, but what exactly did he actually do at the school that made people put his picture in a frame in the hallway? Like, why? Why did that happen? But yeah, okay. So I'm getting off topic here, but yeah, I did like what they did with Max in this. They developed him a lot more. Like on the show, he was always poorly developed. Like outside that finding out that he's half alien thing, outside that arc, he was awful on the show. That is like the only arc he ever got on that show. So yeah, he was not really that great a character. And so then after him we have Steel, who honestly I really thought that I wouldn't like in this movie because I heard his voice and everything, and that voice just did not seem fitting to me because there is one distinct voice for Steel. Steel is always the best part of that show, so he's always the part that I remember. He had a very distinct voice done by, I think his name was Steve Vincent, or Simon Vincent, one of the two. Or Stan Vincent. Okay, I know it's S, like his first name starts with an S, Vincent. His last name is Vincent, I know that. But he had a very distinctive voice for the character, and I didn't really think that that came across well in the trailer. But in the movie, it actually does come across a whole lot better. He, much like the Steel on the show, is probably the most interesting character. Like, on the like, again, it requires knowing the show to know what's interesting about him, and yeah, for people who haven't seen the show, then that might be an issue. Again, there have been some people who gave it positive reviews without seeing all of it. So, yeah, there are still people out there who can find him interesting without knowing what happens, but pretty much his overall arc in this movie was a very good way of referencing what happens on the show and everything with him there. And I really did like how it was done here. Although they have a very odd thing with him that he doesn't understand most things on Earth. Like, that would come into play a bit on the show, but that was never as prominent as it is in this movie. And here, it's really a big thing on this, so yeah, frankly, I just didn't really understand that bit, but yeah, it was pretty good for what it is with him. I honestly liked him. He was probably my favorite character in this. I don't know if that has something to do with him being my favorite character on the show, but yeah, he was actually done pretty well here. The only thing that I kind of wish was focused on more was that he had his amnesia and everything, which pretty much, that was like a major story arc for all of Season 1. In fact, he was the main character on that show. It might be called Max Steel, but really it should be the other way around, because he was the main character on that show. Max was kind of just there, but Steel was overall the main character, and finding out about his past was mainly his story arc. And that's what made him pretty interesting. And while, yes, he is done pretty well with that arc in this movie, I do wish that it was expanded on, or didn't seem so complete by the end, because, yeah, it took them 2 seasons to actually resolve this, and honestly, he doesn't get all of his memories back in the end. So, yeah, it feels like there could still be areas to expand that on the show. Here, it's just like, he's good. He remembers this one event that happened in his lifetime. He's good. So yeah, that was pretty much it with him. We never really found out what significance that tree or that swing had in his flashback. It just had some significance, I'm sure. And also the flashbacks are a big thing that a lot of people complained about in this movie as wasting a lot of time. Yeah, if you've seen the show, then you know the meaning of them, but again, if you haven't seen it, I guess you can get into it, but that depends as to how much you're getting invested into the movie and its overall story. So, yeah, after him we have Molly McGrath, who, honestly, she seems way too young to be playing her. And honestly, she's not as cool as she was on the show. Like, her and Dredd are probably the two characters that I think were done better on the show. So, yeah, Molly on the show, she was in charge of a company, which, yes, at the end of this movie, she is in charge of a company, too, which is a different company. It's Entech, which she was an employee for at one point, but quit due to Jim McGrath's death, which was also her husband. After that, she quit. So, yeah, here, of course, she owns that company now. Makes sense. So, yeah, Molly McGrath on the show was actually a really cool character. She owned her own company, was a very no-nonsense type of person, but still a very nice and kind woman. So she was a good mix of those two characters. She still seemed like a good mother who was working on her own, but she seemed like she could take care of it. I don't know why I can't talk right now, but yeah, she was also really awesome with a katana. Yeah, she's a very skilled person on the show. Like, she ran around with a katana a lot, and in fact, she had this really cool, like, Tron baton weapon that could turn into a katana and a whip. It was awesome, and that sadly never appeared on this movie. I'm kind of sad about that. But still, she was really cool on the show, but here, she could have been a whole lot better. Like, here, she's pretty bland and doesn't really get that much to her. She just seems like the supportive mother in all this, which I guess could be a nice way to set her up, but yeah, I guess it could be a nice way of setting her up for, like, what she could become on the show, but yeah, I didn't really like her in this. And so then after her, we have Sarah, I think. Wait, no, Sophia. Sophia. Her name was Sydney on the show. Sydney Grinder. Here, she's Sophia. Here's my major question. Why change her name? If someone is not aware of this on the show, like if someone hasn't seen the show and they're going to go see this movie, they will never notice it. If someone has seen a bit of the show, then they might notice it but not draw any attention to it. But if someone has seen the show, then they will notice it and find it very annoying when they keep on calling her Sophia when her name is Sydney. So it's directly done to annoy fans. That is done twice in this movie, and I don't get it. I need that. So, yeah, Sophia in this movie. At least that's what they're calling her. I'm probably just gonna keep on mixing up Sophia and Sydney throughout this. But, Sophia is alright. Like, for a love interest in this movie, she's okay. I honestly thought that Max was going to tell her, like he did on the show once, and guess what she did there? She helped out and was awesome. She actually defeated a whole entire Mega Elementor, which is a combination of earth, fire, water, and air. All of those Elementors combined together, which is a very dangerous combination. They defeated Max Steel. Sydney was able to beat them. She actually was very helpful when she learned that Max was Max Steel. Even though the voices aren't changed, so I don't know how they never noticed that. But, yeah, somehow, for whatever reason, they decided not to tell her in this movie. so they could keep that amazing suspense going? I don't know. Like, seriously, he did so it would help clear everything up with him and her, but on the show, but here it's just like, nah, not needed. But for what she is, like, just as a generic love interest, she's alright. Although there was one weird thing with her car. Like, they make her naming her car an important thing in this movie. And I honestly wouldn't mind it if her car was named Sydney. Maybe that would actually, you know, make sense, and that would be a nice little thing, like, hey, that was her name on the show. But nope, her car is Nokia or something like that. I don't know. Like, why? Why even do that? Why even care? So yeah, that honestly made no sense to me. It went nowhere, it had no bearing on anything. It's just, her car has a name, and that apparently required 3 conversations. We had 3 conversations on that, really. Her car having a name was a very important part of this movie. Do not underestimate her car's name. So, yeah, that was honestly just, like, the stupidest thing in this movie. It was one of them. Like I said, there are quite a few stupid things in this movie. So, yeah, for the characters, like, the overall protagonist, one thing I was kind of disappointed, though, was there was no, what was his name? Kenny? I think his name was Kenny, something like that. Kirby, that was it. There's no Kirby in this movie. He was very annoying, so I'm not sure whether or not to be annoyed about that. I don't know how they would have done him in this movie. Like, there's one nerdy character that Max bumps into at one point, and then you see again right next to Max's locker. So I was thinking that that was Kirby, even though it looked and acted nothing like him, but I was just thinking that that was him, and they never say his name, so maybe it was. I don't know. Although apparently this guy wore the same shirt to school every day. I don't know why. I guess that's not so weird. I mean, Max always wore the exact same jacket every day, and no one questioned that, even though it was the summer and he still wore that jacket. Again, no questions. Clearly. So yeah, for him being cut out of the movie, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, because I didn't like Kirby on the show, but yeah, I honestly wouldn't mind seeing how they would have done him on this, because they actually do improve a lot of the characters outside of Molly. So, yeah, for most of the main protagonists in this movie, they're pretty good. Like, I do like how they develop them a lot more outside of Molly. Like, they do get a lot of good development, and honestly, much more than they ever did on the show outside of Steel and Molly. So, yeah, it just depends as to which character you're looking at, but for what's done with them in this movie, they're done pretty well. And then we have the villains. Yep, all 2 of them. So, one of the villains is the Air Elementor. I already talked about him. Honestly, his scene was really cool. Like, that was a very, very cool scene. And honestly, I just really love that scene. It was just so cool. There's nothing else really to say about it. I just really like how it was done. It gave Max Steel a horror movie vibe. What other movie would ever do that? And I honestly really liked it. But then we have Dread. Or should I call him Edwards? Or Edward, I forgot what his last name is. But yeah, his first name is Miles, at least I got that right. But his last name is not Dread. So yeah, everyone calls him Dread on the show because of his last name. What do they call him now? Do they just call him Edward? Oh no, look out, it's Edward! Like, that's not as threatening as, oh no, look out, it's Dread. Like, come on, what? Like, what was that? Like, why even rename him? I don't get that, but, yeah. He's honestly pretty bad in this. Like, the actor, even when he's playing a good guy, like, J-Tunes, he liked him as a good guy, but to me personally, I just really didn't like him. the actor just didn't really do that great. Like, he was okay as a good guy, but when it's revealed that, shocker, he's a bad guy, yeah, amazingly, Miles Dredd is a bad guy. This is shocking information. But yeah, when he's revealed to be a bad guy, apparently he gets a Spanish accent. I don't know where that came from. Like, I noticed that during the movie, and it annoyed me so much. Like, out of nowhere, when he's revealed to be evil, he has a Spanish accent. Why? Like, is that the actor's actual accent? Like, if so, why not just let him use that accent throughout the whole movie? Why do you need a fake accent? But, yeah, that was honestly very weird. And, not gonna lie, I thought that he was actually Forge Ferris in the trailers. Like, he looks so much like Forge. Like, actually, he probably would have made a really good Forge. Like, even that bad acting, yeah, it could have worked, seeing as Forge actually hid a lot of things from Max, so that could have been an attempt to hide things from Max and Steel. But, nope. Never done. Instead, he turns out to be the evil Miles Edward. Still sounds so dumb. Like, Miles Dredd, it's so much better. But, yeah. He gets in the suit, and that's when his acting gets awful. But at least the suit looked okay. Like, compared to what it was on the show, it looks alright. Like, the show still had it look more menacing and didn't have that stupid claw thing. Like, instead, he was just able to absorb turbo energy, even from a little bit of a distance. He didn't need to do this to absorb Max's energy. But yeah, he's also defeated the same way he was on the show. Nice reference! So, yeah, I honestly never thought that was even a cool way to defeat him. Just like, oh no, overload him! Okay. That was simple. But, yeah, he's pretty bad in this, really. Like, just all of them, he's pretty bad. Especially when he gets on the suit, but even before that, he's pretty bad. Like, he's just not really good in this. But one thing I will give them is that they do expand on his backstory a little bit more by saying that he actually got addicted to pretty much the high that being around turbo energy would give him, so he made a suit to be able to absorb it so he could actually feel that high forever. And that was something that was kind of interesting to add to his backstory, because like I said before, his backstory was, he was a good guy at Entech, built a machine, became evil. That was it. So at least they did fill in a little bit of that gap between good guy at Entech and built machine. But yeah, it's still pretty bad. I don't even know why he teamed up with the Ultralinks. Apparently the Ultralink invasion was happening. When? When did that happen? So yeah, now I'm getting more into the bad stuff, which would probably be like most of the high school dialogue. Like when Max is in high school, most of that dialogue is pretty bad. The actors do try and work with it, and in some respects it's fine. Like when Max is lying, he was always pretty weird about that. He was always pretty awkward about it. So that part was fine, but like there were some moments that were just way too awkward. So yeah, the dialogue did play a big part of that. So, yeah, honestly, there are quite a few dumb things, but really this movie is pretty good. I especially recommend it if you've seen the show, because then you'll really have a lot of respect for this. Because this movie is honestly much better than the show ever was. So, it has a lot more character to the characters that were there outside of Steel. Because Steel had more character on that show, and so did Molly, but outside of them, it was actually pretty interesting. They even have a neat way of showing turbo energy in a drawing, which is something that was kind of random to me because Max never drew on the show. He played in a rock band, but he never did art. But yeah, I'll give him this. Max is a good artist. And he actually found a very interesting way of representing turbo energy through painting and drawing. So that was something that I found was really cool. But yeah, all in all, this movie is actually pretty good. Again, I recommend it if you are a fan of the show. Like, if you've seen the show and like it enough, go watch this. It is much better than the show, and you'll get some nice references out of it. But if you haven't seen the show, then this pretty much depends, because, well, there are a lot of things that pay respect to the show, and if you haven't seen it, then, yeah, you might not understand most of the things going on, as there are a lot of references, especially with Tachyon Energy. Which, yeah, even the name Tachyon, that has a big backstory to it on the show. It's a planet that Jim McGrath, or Jim McGraw, as he was originally called, who is the father of Max Steel, that's how he gets his half-alien DNA, and that was pretty much the planet that he came from, which was destroyed by Machino, and that's also where he teamed up with Steel. And eventually he went to Earth as a way to protect a planet very similar to his own, and one that he would fit in on. I've been watching too much of this. So, yeah, oh, and also Tachyon Energy is a very common thing with the species on Tachyon, but is not native to humans. It's pretty much a very advanced energy source that pretty much Tachyons can use in the form of energy blasts and also force fields. They can pretty much use it to manipulate technology and stuff. And humans, or at least ones with half Tachyon DNA, they can pretty much overload technology with it, and when combined with an Ultralink, they can form different turbo modes as long as that Ultralink and the user of Tachyon Energy are properly bonded. Like, if they're good friends and if they trust each other enough, then they'll be able to use turbo modes. Again, I've been watching this too much. So, yeah, honestly, I hope that explains some of his powers. Like, I've heard someone say, like, what are his powers? So I hope that explained it to you. If you watched it. If you watched this. So, yeah, honestly, I thought it was pretty good. Like, it's very good for fans, but even if you're an outsider, I do recommend maybe checking it out. Maybe checking out some of the backstory of Max Steel, too, because that could really help. Like, just check out some of the minor things with it, probably. Like, probably the things I talked about in this video would probably really help to understand half of the things in this movie. So yeah, it's actually a pretty good movie. I honestly really enjoyed it. Maybe that's just because I've been watching the show and everything. I don't know, maybe. But it's actually better than the show, so if you like the show, then you'll definitely like this movie. Or maybe you won't, I don't know, maybe you'll find it unfaithful, even though it is faithful. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye. Okay, I got it right on the trivia thing, but, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch, how could you not get that? But, pretty much, right now, oh, wait, it's both? Huh, cool. Okay, but, there is nobody in this theater right now. We are all alone, although this time, we got a real treat. There is no cup in here. Yeah, really, there is no cup in here this time. So this is how the movie theater remains for the whole showing. And then it will honestly be the saddest movie turnout I've ever been to. But, I honestly, oh, sorry. I'm just recording previews, so I don't know if that matters. But, yes, I am ready, movie screen. Why am I talking to you? Okay, but, yeah, right now I am just waiting for more people to come in because I honestly got here right before, like the second that I saw the 7:15 showing was playing, I just rushed in here. So yeah, yes, I do have popcorn. Okay, guys, people have actually come into the theater. Awesome! I'm not alone. And there's the poster.